business does about 3.5–4 million turnover, makes about 400k profit. We made 80k deal fee as well on day one. You don't actually have to know everything. Know a little bit about a lot, and then a lot about deal making, structuring deals. So we did that whole deal fee, no money, fully self-financed. It's actually ended up the actual sellers now owe us close to £400,000 personally from the deal. And we bought that company using nothing.
I'd like to introduce you to someone who started off on Mastermind, has been in the inner circle for, I think this is his second year now, and has just done a couple of deals that we're going to be focusing on for this particular session. So let's go back to the deal that won you Deal of the Year. Let's talk about that, and then we'll move it up to the present time.
The headline figures on the deal, the business does about 3.5–4 million turnover, makes about 400k profit per annum. It's kind of a little bit up and down anyway, sort of between 400 and 450. And the way we structured it was we paid 1.2 million in essence for the business, and we gave them 400k on day one, and then the remaining 800k on an earn-out, so they get a profit share of net profits until such time as the remaining 800k was cleared. It was really interesting because I remember when I first, we're doing the mail out, and what was nice about this one was I remember I had my first call with him, my exploratory call on a Thursday, and we'd signed heads of terms the following Friday, and we were in legals, and it was about 8.5 weeks from initial call to completion in that time frame. We paid the initial consideration, so there's about £1 million worth of kit, like plant hire and stuff like asset, in essence, asset finance within that company. And what we ended up doing, that initial 400k, so rather than getting finance, what we actually ended up doing was he sold us 400 grand's worth of equipment to my company over here. And then we used the 400k of his equipment to pay the initial consideration on the deal that he just sold us. And then obviously the rest is on an earn-out deferred. So we have subsequently got factoring, but we didn't need any finance for the deal, and we literally just gave him machines he already owned to fund the initial.
So let's just clarify that, just to make sure everyone's clear.
Yes.
So you've got this machinery. You're going to pay him 400,000. So you give him 400,000 pounds worth of machinery that he then leases back to you, so you can continue operating it, but he owns it.
Yeah. So he does a lease back on the kit.
So you didn't give him cash. You actually gave him the company's kit, equipment to satisfy that 400,000.
Correct. So that was all kind of rubber stamped. The main reason why he wanted to do that was he has a plant hire business anyway, so there's kind of a degree of logic there. But because he was getting his deferred payments of 800k were linked to net profit of the business. So he was like, well, if you're putting a load of finance on the company, which I understand is normal, that's going to reduce the speed at which I get my net profit. So I would rather us not use any finance and do it like this.
So pause there, because this is genius. Think about the logic here. If they are on an earn-out that is all about profitability of the business, and the profitability of the business is going to be reduced by the finance that might be used to buy the business, it is within their interest to effectively do a vendor finance / seller finance / deferred consideration model, because it makes the business more profitable, which means that they get their money faster.
Correct.
You are incentivizing them to do vendor finance because they get a better, faster deal than if you ignored that and went and actually got some asset finance or whatever it might be.
Yeah, so that's what we did. And what's really nice about it as well is we haven't got like the lease back agreement it's not just like an ongoing monthly fee. It's ad hoc. So we win a piece of work and we price it into the piece of work accordingly. So we only pay for it when we actually use it. What was really nice about this, we made 80k deal fee as well on day one. So we and me and Harry were we had a drink on Tuesday night. My partner Harry, you probably recognise him, and we were just thinking, how have we done that? It was quite a nice, no money. He's basically given his company. We've made 80k on day one, and now we're making anywhere between 30 and 50k a month. And yeah, we did it like I say, from first call on the Thursday, we had heads signed 8 days later, and it was an 8.5 week time frame from start to finish.
So what was the motivation behind selling? How could you do it so fast? Because from conversation to heads in how many days?
6 working days.
6 working days is pretty impressive. So what was the thinking behind that? Why did it work?
Yeah, I think straight away, and you'll have this, and I always see it on the LinkedIn, like he was massively motivated. There was a huge level of motivation. You know, you can't do a deal like that if someone doesn't actually want to sell their business and they're just fishing, right? So that was number one. It helped I had a holiday planned like the following Monday, so I basically said to him, look, you've got a week to agree this deal with me because I'm away for 3 weeks.
You could kind of always have a holiday planned.
Yeah.
You're creating a deadline, aren't you?
Yes, yeah, correct. I didn't correct him, or I didn't say, I don't think this is going to happen. But yeah, the actual deadline to complete, we actually completed 2 weeks before that. And I said, well, we're ready now. Let's just sign paperwork and kind of get it done.
If you want to find out how to buy a business successfully, get your free business buying toolkit. The link is in the video description below.
Yes, we did take some shortcuts, but because I've done this for a while now, it's calculated risks, you know, and one of the major things was we weren't putting finance in, etc. And I knew the stuff that we were missing, and I was like, well, actually, if we haven't got that, does it really matter?
Give us an example.
Well, actually, an example on this, we almost got no accounts. So maybe that one. We also knew, and I told you about this one, we agreed when we bought the company that we were buying a net asset position. So what that means is you agree a line in the sand when you sign the heads of terms of what the company needs to look like at the point of completion. If it goes up or down, your offer will adjust accordingly, pound for pound. So what that means is it could be, we agree that you've got 250K's worth of cash in the bank, and you've got £500,000 worth of debtors and £500,000 worth of creditors. So they balance out, and then there's 250 grand left over. But for example, if there was 200 grand in the bank, we would adjust the purchase price accordingly. And I told you about this, and we're still figuring out what to do in an ethical way. So we did that whole deal, like I said, deal fee, no money, fully self-financed. It's actually ended up the actual sellers now owe us close to £400,000 personally from the deal. And we bought that company using nothing. So it has ended up being quite nice.
What was your level of communication with the seller throughout that, was it 7.5 weeks?
Yeah, 7.5, 8 weeks.
Yeah. How often did you speak to them?
A lot. And all of the deal team that we use. So we use Martin, we use Chris. It's a bit of a hit squad. Even then, in terms of communication, I was up everyone's backside for about 7.5 weeks, calling them. I apologised to Martin a few times, saying, look, I know I keep calling you and I'm going to keep calling you, but I do apologise. You've just got to, don't leave it to chance. Even these guys that are really good, these deal team, chase them, and chase the sellers for stuff. And we're probably talking 3-4 times a week. Just agreeing points, moving on, kind of thing, and just not letting it slip. And I think
this is just so important, because I think people under-communicate. And they say, it's all in hand, I don't have to do anything now. I can not sort of worry anyone for a week. But you need to be all over it all the time. You need to be the squeaky wheel that gets the oil. You need to move yourself up to the top of everyone's agenda every single day by, to a certain extent, almost making a bit of a nuisance of yourself.
Big time.
But then you're paying. So why wouldn't you demand instant responses to things? And I think that is just very, very important. I think it's very easy to let a deal slide, and it's during that week where there's no communication. They talk to their brother-in-law, and their brother-in-law says, oh, you could probably get a better deal elsewhere, and it all starts to unravel. So you need to be the voice in their ear all the time. But also, it creates a bond, it creates a relationship. And I know that the owner is still working in the business, or one of them is.
So we decided we put him on PAYE, and he's now running the business for us.
It's just perfect, isn't it?
So we've owned it.
Who is best to run the business, and the person who's been running it,
this is it,
successfully as well?
Yeah. So I think I've been there, and Harry's been there 6 times, once a month, 1 day a month. And we met on Tuesday there, and we were like, I'm not sure. We only go in now just to say, hi, we're still here now, kind of thing. It's kind of like we've not disappeared, but we don't do anything. And it's kind of...
And it would be wrong, if you were doing things, then that shows that there is a problem with the management and their ability to make decisions and to run the business without you. If you're going in there and sort of solving everyone's problems, you think, well, these problems are going to be here when I'm not here, so who's solving them when I'm not here? Do they go unsolved? And you should not be the... Quite often, people like us are great problem solvers. We're entrepreneurial, we love a challenge, we can solve every problem, but you don't want to be that person in the business that you buy.
Harry has done more, like my kind of role is do the deals and Harry runs it post-deal. He has been a little bit more, and you'll know this when you buy, he's grabbed hold of all the finance. So he's now kind of running the bank account money in the short term with, they had a load of old debt and stuff like that they were collecting in. So he's done the important bit and now he's kind of stepping back, which is quite nice.
And you both met here in this room?
Yeah. You were talking earlier about partnerships. So yeah, we started working together last May. And I'd like to add as well, and because I never seemed to struggle with this barrier, but I didn't know the sector. I had no experience. I'm an ex-primary school teacher, so I had no idea about the sector, neither did Harry. Harry manufactures clothes. Like I said, I used to be a primary school teacher. So it was a completely new sector to us, completely. So if you're thinking, well, I don't know what sector to do, just do any sector.
I'd imagine, actually, Harry's sector is quite tight on margins. And I bet he's always been all over the detail of the money. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I think since we bought it, he's made full kudos to him, because I don't go anywhere near it. He's probably made about anywhere between 5 and 8K worth of efficiencies a month just by going over the monthly management accounts and cutting stuff and cancelling direct debits. And I've always had a thought this might get you in trouble, but I've always liked to do this. You buy a company and just cancel everything. You'll soon find out which ones you need to pay again, if you see what I mean. Because people say, why have you cancelled my thing? And they say, well, what's it for? Can you explain to me? So just save yourself a fortune just by doing that and say, and if they get funny, oh, really sorry, we're just taking over. The bank did it on their own. I mean, just say it.
I don't know whether you got that from me or from somewhere else, but to be fair, that's in your training materials already. So if you haven't heard that before, then you've missed that detail, because absolutely, the moment you take control of the bank account, close everything down, because you don't know who's got charge cards, credit cards. You can always get all those things again very quickly. Within 5 or 6 days, you can get credit cards back, and you test how much those cards are actually needed. And cancel everything. They'll tell you that you've cancelled it.
And some have said, oh, actually, that they popped up and said, the lights won't turn on, so we put the electricity back on and stuff like that. But no, most of them we never really came around. So yeah, that was something.
And how did you deal with this hurdle that some people have, that they don't know that sector?
It'd be lying it's definitely easier if you know the sector. Let's be frank. Like, it is easier. It's easier for credibility, etc., etc. I just think if you just got to come across confident to the seller, because it's a confidence thing. If you're giving them all this deferred, they have to believe in what you're saying. But that's just confidence in the way you communicate and the way you deliver it. This is how businesses are sold. This is how it normally happens. And kind of leading the conversations. If you let them run away with it, they're going to start saying, well, have you got proof of funds? Have you ever done this before? Show me credibility. And that sort of stuff.
That scripting's
Is it? Oh, okay, yeah. So, and I think with the sector, myself, Harry far more, but we have a sound commercial knowledge. So, on businesses, they're not too dissimilar. It's the technical stuff in each business that's dissimilar. And if you buy a big enough business, you're not going to be doing the technical stuff anyway. So you don't actually need that knowledge. What you need is the knowledge of, you need to be able to oversee a business, is kind of the knowledge you probably need. So it would take you 20 years to learn the technical stuff in the sector. You're never going to learn it. So you're not doing it, you don't need it because you're not doing it anyway. You just need to have kind of a common sense with the commercial overview.
Yeah, you need to have a business head on your shoulders, because you need to know the difference between making a profit and making a loss, for example. But I'm not a numbers person in any way whatsoever, but it's about having the right numbers people. And if you get the wrong numbers people, then that's obviously a massive hindrance. But if you get the right people in place, then you are replacing or substituting your lack of knowledge or experience in something with someone who has that knowledge and experience and can do it better than you would ever be able to do it. That's why you hire a lawyer, right? Because you don't want to have to learn the whole legal process. Why don't you just hire someone who's been doing it for 30 years, who can pick it up and run with it? It's the same with finance or operations or whatever it might be. So in other words, don't let any lack of something be a hindrance. Just find someone who can fill that gap in your knowledge, skills, and experience.
I think adding on that, I think one of the most, like I said, having done this for a couple of years now, I think for everyone in this room, the skill you want to crack is being really, really good at finding deals, and then having a phone book full of people for everything else. So, for example, I have a reasonable, I say, compared to the guys that I use, I have a basic understanding in finance. I have a basic understanding in legals. I have a basic understanding in FDD, etc. But then I'm pretty sharp at deal structure, negotiating deals, and that's what I've put all my focus in. And then I just pay them to do that bit.
So you focus on the bit that you are good at.
Yeah.
The working knowledge comes from just, you can't help but learn it as you're around it all the time.
Yep.
So, and if you cast your mind back a couple of years, I remember having a Zoom with you. I remember exactly where I was sitting when I had a Zoom with
signed
you.
on?
Yeah.
Okay.
I remember
Yeah.
that. And I can't remember what was going through your head at the time, but you were quite sort of curious about, would this work for you? I think that was your line of questioning.
Yeah, it was the reason why I get a lot of value from being in a room and my network and people. I know it's cliche and cheesy, right? That's just kind of how I work. So I like the fact that it was in room. You can ask people, call people. You know, like the Inner Circle boys and girls are great, like Martin and Chris and other people. I think there's so much value in that. I remember when I first started this, it is overwhelming. You're thinking, Christ, there's so much to do. But you don't actually have to know everything. Know a little bit about a lot, and then a lot about, I would say, deal making, structuring deals.